And in the UK, the FTSE 100 earlier climbed above the 7,500 mark, but later slipped back. The wider FTSE 250 index was up 43.0 points. Now let's bring in Juliana Olayinka from our London studio for more on the markets. Juliana, it's good to see you again today. Now, the markets seem to be brushing off the coronavirus effect, but most companies are taking strategic steps to contain the spread. Talking about British Airways, which has stopped flights to China. What are the alternatives?
Good afternoon, Bissy. Well, there don't seem to be any alternatives, and that's one of the huge pressing issues with this deadly coronavirus. When it comes to the markets and the economy, no news is definitely bad news. I think there are some concerns that it could have a global economic impact worse than what we saw in 2002 and 2003 with the SARS epidemic, because so far, of course, there are over 4,500 cases already confirmed in China, and it's spread outside Pacific Asia. It's now in North America, and it's definitely now in Europe. So measures have taken place. Of course, as you said, British Airways, they have suspended flights going to mainland China for at least 2 days. They said it won't extend past that. And that's really because the World Health Organization so far have stopped short from calling this a global emergency, because all of the deaths have taken place in China. So it's still of huge concern, particularly as well, you know, the world was just recovering from the trade tariff war between Beijing and Washington. And now it's the Lunar New Year holidays. There should have been a lot of spending in China. People are quarantined and are on lockdown. A lot of people are putting their money in safe havens as well, like gold, taking their money away from the Asian index and the main London index and in New York, and really showing some panic. So at the moment, nobody knows what's going on, but people are taking high precautions.
Well, Juliana, let's talk about data from the Nationwide indicating that UK property prices are on the rise. How much more do you have to pay to buy a house in the UK?
Well, I would say how much more. At the very least, you're talking about at least a couple of thousands, maybe 20 or 30,000 pounds. But no, good news for the UK property market. It shows that month on month, house prices in the UK have risen by 0.5%, and year on year, it's risen by 1.9%, which is an increase on December's year on year rise, which was 1.7%. A lot of analysts that look at property data are saying that again, it's the Boris bounce, that historic election victory that UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson received in December did give some optimism. There was consumer confidence regained again, and people were buying property. However, there have been some analysts that say, you know, just hold fire, don't get too excited, because, of course, on Friday we're leaving the European Union, and the Brexit woes are likely to start coming up again, because we only have 11 months to secure a trade deal. So the numbers coming out of the UK at the moment are good, but some are saying that it's likely to dip over the next couple of months.
And talking about numbers now, bring us up to speed with markets figures at intraday and, of course, what is driving them.
Well, we've got a US Federal Reserve meeting coming up later today. A lot of people don't expect, of course, rates to be cut, but markets are waiting in a breath to see what comes out of that. At intraday, the all share is up 0.10%. The FTSE 100 is up by 0.13%, and the FTSE 250 is up by 0.24%. In currencies, the pound is down against the dollar by 0.09%, up against the euro by 0.08%, and down on the Japanese yen by 0.18%. One of the main low drivers on the FTSE All Index is the IAG, the British Airways owner. Their shares dropped, of course, once they announced that they were cancelling flights to mainland China.
Many thanks, Juliana, for these updates. And Chemi, we'll be back with you tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you, Bissy.
In Hong Kong, shares plummeted today as the city's markets returned from a holiday amid the coronavirus fears. The Hang Seng Index declined 2.82% to close at 27,160.63. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 was up 0.71%. closing at 23,379.4, while the Topix index gained 0.45%, ending its trading day at 1,699.95. South Korea's Kospi also added 0.39%, closing at 2,185.28. And in Australia, stocks closed, the ASX 200 closed 0.53% higher at 7,031.5. Markets in China remain closed for the holidays. And in the U.S. stock index, futures were higher this morning as the markets continue to rebound from Monday's heavy sell-off. Dow futures were up 36 points and implied a positive open of more than 73 points. While futures on the S&P 500 and Nasdaq were also higher. Investors will be closely watching the U.S. Federal Reserve this afternoon as the central bank convenes for the first monetary policy meeting of the decade. Corporate earnings season remains in focus, of course, after Goldman Sachs and Apple led the Dow's gains on Tuesday. Still to come on the show in just a moment, the International Finance Corporation speaks about reform options for productivity in Nigeria. Please stay with us.